I might switch to education. So it's kind of like
Cool. Now we can see where's the, I'm not going to count them and say this one came out number one. It doesn't really matter, right? It's more important that you can kind of get the visual sense that mentoring current students is way important. Supporting students on campus already to mobilize in some of these political activities. Cost of higher education, crazy important. We barely talked about it, right? Appointing Latinos to boards and positions of power in the higher ed institutions themselves, recruiting educators of color, and then it looks like make college fun and exciting is also like really important. Does that seem like that's some of the good stuff that's sifted up to the top? There's lots of other things that got stickies. It doesn't mean that they're not important, but those are some of the things that are more critical. Somebody lost this.
Oh,
Somebody who's wearing fly turquoise? Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to recommend you put it on eBay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, if nobody claims it, I'm going to take it and make a new necklace. Fun. Cool. And so I want to take this last, we have about, how much time? 30 minutes?
Yeah.
About 8. We have a good chunk of time in order to say, because I feel like all the time we always talk about stuff and we're like, man, things suck, stuff is really hard. And then it's like, oh, time to go, let's go to our next workshop. So we never get to solutions, right? So what are things that we could do in order to start making some of these things happen, right? Gully put up a really awesome website that's got chock full of awesome information. So students, if you guys need to go navigate some stuff, you guys should go check out this website. And maybe another piece of advocacy is even reviewing it and seeing if there's anything else that we could be putting up there. Right?
So in terms of what to do,
Yeah.
I think at least when it comes to cost, I know a few years ago, Colorado, even though we have the highest per capita of educated people, they're all educated who have moved here. And it's not necessarily homegrown. And one of the reasons is because our funding for higher education is really low compared, for a state our size. And so I think whether it be a task force through the CLF or something that comes out of here to monitor when those votes on hits to the higher education come up throughout the legislative session here in Colorado, what can we do to be present at those votes, to make our voice heard, to send out a press release to monitor it, to say, look, we are here when it comes to higher education, here's a potential cut, another hit, and this is how it's going to affect the Latino community because this funding is used to support these programs. So I think that's a very real, tangible thing that we can mobilize against. So I get to encapsulate it would be to monitor when cuts are happening to higher education this next legislative session, and then to come up with, okay, a trigger point, say what are we going to do as a coalition to stand up against that.
Cool. I was remiss because there actually are a couple of bullet points on, we want to refer back to the form that we used earlier. On the back side, there's a couple of items, right? Support Colorado asset, support measures at the primary and secondary levels to ensure post-secondary success. We'll support young students so that they can either get to college, they are successful. And then support for publicly subsidized higher education, i.e. more funding, and then support development of more higher ed affordable options. So those are the things that we have already. What are other things that we should be talking about?
When you're asking what we can do, you mean what CLF and or CLLARO can do, right?
Yes, actually, that's a good clarification.
Okay. Because, I mean, there's only so much that CLF and CLLARO can do for a variety of reasons. But I think that CLF in particular has been very, very good at supporting political candidates as they run for campaigns. But I misspeak, please correct me, but I've never seen that type of support for the type of appointments that you were talking about, Jim, for educational institutions. So CLF already has that mentality and already has that kind of framework in place. I would suspect that they could just expand the scope of the people they attempt to support to include people who may be running for appointments to educational institutions. So that could be some low-hanging fruit to
Yeah,
to
no
grab.
doubt.
A good example of that is Irene Grieg. She was actually recommended by CLF and CLLARO. She was a
Can I
direct
put a
recommendation.
Quick twist on that. What would be terrific would be if CLF or CLLARO would actually train and prepare candidates for these nominations. So when the governor is looking for names of people to be appointed, he looks at the bios. And if we actually had a course in CLF preparing people, because some of this is pretty dense and complex stuff. So that might be something.